the most amazing thing is the work that you guys and girls have been doing. You created thousands of new World Share Worlds the past year. And I think we'll be constantly amazed about the creativity, the ingenuity, and also some of the new ways you can basically tell stories in immersive worlds like VR. And we had great success. And I think for us, and I run Viveport, and the way to think about Viveport is kind of the place you go to find great content and experiences as a consumer, regardless if you're on Vive or Oculus or any other platform. And also, we want to help developers essentially build a business, get known, get awareness, get sales up. And for us, last year has been a breakthrough for us. So during 2018, we actually tripled our sales. We had 3 times the more content, we have 3 times more paying customers, and we have 3 times sales. Actually, Q4 sales for us was the same size as the entirety of 2017. So we're still early days, but the reason I'm telling you this is that we want to partner with you and basically help build your business, because most of the sales is going directly back to you developers. The main reason for this growth is that last year we actually added games for the first time on Viveport. There's been a lot of questions about Steam and Viveport. Of course, Steam is the place to go for gaming, but we actually at GDC last year, we actually for the first time added games. Before that, we kind of primarily focused on beyond gaming experiences, like education, arts, culture, creativity, social. But last year, we added over 1,000 games. So we are definitely a destination for finding great gaming content as well today. The other thing that we did was that we opened up to serve not just the Vive platform, but also the Oculus platform. So we truly believe that as a game developer, you need to publish on multiple platforms to maximize your distribution and maximize your revenues. The other thing we did is that we recently partnered with Amazon. So when, for example, that you buy a new VR headset, here in the US, for example, over 50% of all VR headsets are sold through Amazon. So what we do is that we bundle with Amazon. So when you buy a VR headset, you basically have co-marketing. So if you're Weaver from the Blue and you buy an Oculus or a Vive headset, you essentially can buy the content on Amazon as well. So trying to find new ways to monetize as well. The other thing that has been a key driver for our success is our subscription service. And the way the subscription service works is very simple. You can pick 5 apps. Typically, you'll pick 5 $20 apps. And then it's almost like an early Netflix where you can only have 5 DVDs. You can swap them out as you long, but you can only have 5. But the value for consumers is that they get 5 titles worth $20 each or $10 each. Could be $100 for only $8.99. And as you may have seen, and hopefully you have seen, is that we are launching the world's first infinite subscription service. It's kind of the Netflix of VR, where you would have unlimited access to over 600 top titles of games, apps, videos, and in the future, social experiences. It's definitely the best value in VR because for a very low monthly fee, you get unlimited access to so much content. So think about it. For the new price that we announced earlier last week is $12.99. So for $12.99, similar to Netflix, you essentially have unlimited access to most of the content that you will need. Of course, if you're launching a new Star Wars title or maybe the first week of your game, you're probably maximizing download sales. But after 6 to 12 months, you should definitely be in subscription. The good thing with the subscription service is that it works for both Oculus and Vive. And we're announcing here today that we're bringing it also to Microsoft Mixed Reality platform later this year. So we want to make sure that when you publish on Viveport Infinity, that you reach all PC VR platforms. The service will also launch on the Wave platform. So I think you all know that there's a new segment with standalone VR coming, both from us, from our friends at Oculus, as well as many other partners in the industry. So the new Vive Focus, which we'll talk a little bit more about, will also have infinite subscription, as will all the other headsets that are launching on the Wave platform, like Pico, HCE, Shadow, etc. The other news we announcing here today is that we're changing the developer revenue share. So we're changing it from 70-30, which has been sort of the standard in the past years, to 80% to developers for the rest of this year, to give extra incentive for everyone to make sure that we build this Netflix of VR. The other thing to note is that in this 20% that we capture, I'm going to tell you why we charge you 20%, we also take the transaction fee, like credit card fee, sales processing fees, which is typically 5%. So we essentially get 15%. So it's very performance-based. The new thing with Infinity that's great for your developer is that this is such a great consumer value proposition. So we're targeting 3x subscribers in 2019. So of course, if you have 3 times more customers, there will be 3 times more revenue for developers. The second thing is that we're increasing the consumer pricing from $8.99 to $12.99, which is $4 up, which essentially is around 45% more revenue to developers as well. And the final thing, which is great for developer, is that we're changing the model. So in the past, you could pick 5 apps. So if you got picked, you got 1/5 of the rev share, typically $1.25. However, some consumers don't always pick 5 apps. So you were kind of capped to be the $1.25. Now, the new model is that if you get played, you get paid. And if the consumer only plays 1 app, you essentially get all the revenue share, which is just over $10 for that consumer. And we estimate that most customers are spending playing VR on the weekends. So you should estimate that around 3-4 titles per month is what we're seeing right now. So this is going to be more customers, more revenue, and also a model that works for developers, and then higher rev share. The other thing which is interesting is that when consumers don't have any restrictions, they can actually try everything, even a shorter experience. They are things that they didn't pay, $10 for before. They're going to try now. So the long tail of developers is going to get much more revenue in this model than the current model, where typically, if you're not on the top 20 or 50 list, you're not getting much sales anymore. Make sense? Okay. So what we want to do is we basically want to shake hands with you, developer, to basically build this service, to create a Netflix of VR that will boost both user engagement, user usage. We need consumers to come back to VR and spend much more time in the headset and feel excited about it, explore much more content than ever before. And the download pricing model has been sort of a restriction there, because there's only so much money you have as a consumer. So we want to make sure that this model makes sure that you try much more content than ever before. And of course, this will also drive more revenue to developers, especially down the long tail. So what is it that we actually do for you? So I would say that our main purpose at Viveport is essentially to work for you. And what our job is to feature you in the store, make sure that we market you in social media, blog posts. We do paid advertising. We push your content in emails to everyone who actually bought the device. We also bundle you, if you do timing well, with our hardware. And then we protect it better than most other players in the industry through DRM. And then finally, we manage all payments as well as any refunds. We're trying new things. The team just started to live stream. So in this case, they're playing Angry Birds. I think we have a session with Vertigo Games at the end of this week. We are, of course, doing themes. So if it's Halloween, we will promote scary applications. We write blog posts about you. We do paid media advertising featuring your content. But I think also one of the things we want to do is basically help you tell your story. So what we do is that we do various kind of mixed reality. We do developer videos. So I wanted to show you just one that we released now. And let's see if I can have some sound maybe. So let's look at this one.
Let's play TribeXR is a new experience. It's a whole new approach to DJing. You can become a performing DJ.
TribeXR is an immersive training platform for practical creative skills.
Dedicated to building a curriculum for DJing and music production.
A full-feature deck, the one-to-one map of what you see in the real world.
Pyramind is a music production and DJ school based here in the Bay Area. Tribe partnered with Pyramind with a vision to bring the students who are online the ability to train in VR.
We set up a station that runs Tribe XR in Pyramind, and it allows the professional DJ mentors to give live lessons to anyone in the world.
If you're an absolute beginner, you go onto Tribe, and within 30 seconds, you're on pro-grade equipment that would normally cost you about $6,000. You also have the ability to spend time training, so you're not limited like you would be in a real school. What we see is a lot of professionals coming to our platform, and they're using Tribe to practice for gigs or to hone their skills.
We've been really doing a big push for performance and streaming capture. You can host your own live mixed radio shows on Twitch.
So if you ever wanted to be a DJ, you should definitely try that. Lots of fun. The other thing we do for you is we also want to showcase your content experiences live. So for example, there's an area here at GDC where we feature some great content from a number of different partners. So it's everything from VIVE Sync that you'll hear a little bit more about here today, about the next generation of collaboration, kind of Skype with avatars in VR. To Audica, who might be the next Beat Saber, to innovative projects like Ghost, as well as classics like Budget Cuts. So please go there and check it out. And I think also we want to work with you. So when you're working on your next big thing and you want to get some feedback and give some early access to consumers, please talk to our marketing team. The other thing is that, for the past 2 years, we talked about the arcade opportunity. And I think the past 2 years, we actually learned a lot about this. So everything from the small sort of indie arcade operators in a cellar somewhere or in a shopping mall to the big Dave & Buster's and IMAX of the world. I do think that this opportunity is starting to root down. I think they have not really found the model yet. But I think if you have certain key things for free, if you have customer flow in a shopping mall or a cinema, if you are having a secondary business model, you're serving alcohol like Dave & Buster's, it is much easier for you to build this business or not. What we do is that when you publish your content on Viveport, you can essentially just do a little checkbox and opt in to reach the 1,600 stations that we have currently on the platform. But we are looking to provide that content to all the different arcade operators around the world. So it's a new way for you to get your brand out there and find an extra window of monetization to think about. So please talk to us about that. The other thing which is kind of unique with HTC and our special presence in China, it's a very hard market. There's a lot of piracy, a lot of complications. But what we do is that we work with you developers to basically bring your content to China, localize the content, help you with all the restrictions on maybe you cannot have red blood, or maybe you don't have nudity, or maybe you don't have skeletons. There are all kinds of things that you think about. So we will work with you, help you make sure that you can launch in China and be successful. We're launching the Infinity subscription service both for PC VR as well as for standalone on the Wave platform. And we have a very strong partner with Qualcomm, who's here to talk to you today as well, who's essentially powering all these Chinese leading headsets coming up, where Viveport and Wave is kind of the default platform. So by publishing on Viveport, you're not reaching just the Vive Focus, but you're reaching all these other headsets as well. So it's a very efficient way for you to publish. So when you're thinking about publishing for standalone, think that you should publish on all the leading platforms. So the other thing, which is super interesting, of course, we had an exciting hype. People are getting a little bit more sober, realistic about the future of VR. But here at the show, we're talking this year only, we're launching 3 new devices. The Vive Focus Plus, the Cosmos, and the Vive Pro Eye, all of them coming out this year. And of course, if you have great content experiences that make these devices come alive, we would love to partner with you to showcase your content, because the reason people are getting these devices is to experience your content. So this is a great opportunity that you should highlight to us when you have something which is maybe not next week, but something that's coming in the next quarter or 2 quarters to come as well, so we can plan together. So what is really working for developers? And I think one of the things that has really improved the past year is how you tell stories. How do you tell stories in an immersive media? How do you use the media with haptic feedback, with controllers, with sound, and future with eye tracking, facial tracking? The developer community has evolved a lot, and there's so many things. But I wanted to give a quick perspective on and where we are on the platform side. So GDC, every time, 2 times a year actually, do a survey and looking at which platform are you currently developing for, and also which platform are you planning for in the future. So I'm very happy to see that HTC VIVE is still the dominant platform, and also in the future has the leadership. What's interesting here is actually to see the difference between what you're doing today and what you're going to do tomorrow. So a couple of things to note is that our friends at HoloLens and as well as Magic Leap, so it's kind of AR is growing. The interest in AR application is growing quite a bit, which I think is interesting. Also, our friends at PlayStation are doing well. And then, of course, that VIVE is still in the leadership, so that's great news. Looking at last year, you are game developers, so you know this probably much better than I do. But it is still so that you kind of have the main sort of shooters, if it's Onward or Pavlov or Arizona Sunshine or more storytelling like Fallout or Skyrim. I mean, the big thing that kind of stands out from last year is, I would say, Beat Saber, who kind of just announced that they shipped over 1 million units, which is great. When we look at not just the sales data, but we look at the usage data, there's a different picture that sort of complements this. And a couple of interesting things that, the early days of the Blue and Richie's Plank are still some of the most used one. I'm suspecting that, if you're a VR advocate, you kind of use that to showcase VR to your friends. So we're kind of in this early stage where you're demoing for your friends. The other thing which is interesting is we launched Ready Player One, which was a free app, did well over 100,000 units in the beginning, free app. Then we added a DLC content upsell, which worked pretty well. I think that kind of combo where you give something free and then you have a monetization level is something to consider. Another thing which is interesting is that these kind of sticky applications like Tilt Brush, you come back to them all the time. Or even some of the video platforms where you come back to all the time, where you have kind of utility is a very important aspect of creating an experience. And the same thing, of course, with VR Chat, which is a great social platform for VR who takes it to the next level. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that. I think that what's happening is that VR is kind of becoming a media platform. So if you think about Beat Saber, besides being a great game and fun to play, it's also something that's fun to watch. You want to watch people play Beat Saber. And then one of our ViveX company, Live, provides the technology for you as a developer to very easily broadcast the gameplay in a mixed reality fashion. So I think, think about that when you do your next game. It shouldn't just be fun to play. It should also be fun to watch. You want to look cool when you're in VR, especially if you have aspiration of being an esports title. The other one, which we're going to talk a little bit about later today, we have VR Chat here, who sell well over millions of downloads. However, looking at Steam charts, looking at concurrent users, I just pulled the data from last weekend. I don't know if you can read it, but you can see this is Friday, March 15 at 11 o'clock my time, our time here. You had Arizona Sunshine, 144 people. Pavlov, 353. Beat Saber, 1,500. VR Chat, 8,500. So order of magnitude higher, and why is that? And the reason is that for VR Chat, of course, you can be in VR, hanging out with your friends as an avatar of your choice, but you can also join from outside VR, from your PC, and watch what's going on, interact with the people. So you kind of have these hybrid applications. And I think there's a learning there when you create your next VR experience. Think about not just the person in VR, but also how can you engage other people who are on PC or mobile phones, or maybe even in the room, participating in that kind of experience to make it much more social. And also then, of course, the VR person in VR is kind of marketing this to people who are VR curious. I think that's going to be an important way to spread how awesome VR is to everyone. So, what is the next big thing? And I think the next big thing, we should take some learnings from a couple of different areas. The first one is, of course, everything that made Minecraft great and appeal to that audience when it comes to being a social platform where you can create things yourself. Take the learnings who then, the Minecraft generation, kind of migrating to Battle Royale and Fortnite. So think about all the things that made Fortnite great. And I think to some extent, if we can take this horde of people, Fortnite had, I think it was, I read an article that they broke a new record with almost 8 million concurrent users, not 8,500, but 8 million concurrent users. So if we can bring this horde of people to have a much more awesome experience in VR, we're set for life in this industry. The other thing is, of course, Beat Saber. Fun gameplay, very innovative. It doesn't have to be another shooter. And also, you should look cool when you play. VR chat, think about the hybrid experiences. How can you create these hybrid experiences? And finally, how many here are interested to see the final season of Game of Thrones in 27 days? Hand up. All right. I went to the website. There's like a clock counting down. So I am a strong believer in and how television has changed. If you think about HBO, they kind of defined, we moved from movies to TV series and having this episodical content. I think when you develop games, you don't have to make a 500-hour gameplay AAA title. You can create the first episodes and then kind of add new chapters, leveraging all the things that you have developed, which keeps your audience motivated. And for Viveport Infinity, where you have a subscription service, similar to HBO or Netflix, it will make people stay and come back. And if they come back to your next module, you're going to get paid again and again and again and again. So it's a very good model for you to think about as you move forward. The other thing with game developer is that it's not just about money. It is about money, but it's also about fame and recognition. So for the third year, we have Viveport Developer Awards. This year, we have 4 categories: entertainment, education, arts and culture, and arcade. Some of them are for web, and all of them are for PC. So tonight, you're all invited to our developer mixer, where we will announce the winners. The nominees are these fine folks. It's super tough. It'll be super hard to pick the nominees, but tonight you're going to find out who the winners are. And I want to show you a little bit. I think, Thomas, can you stand up? So this is Thomas. He's doing everything here. He's running our developer marketing. And we're in the same venue, right?
Yeah, please do.
OK, so here's a little quick video from what you can expect tonight.
All right, welcome to the Viveport Developer Awards.
So free drinks, awards, and food. What can be better? So in closing, if there's one takeaway that I want to leave you with, we are approaching the 50th anniversary of the moon landing this year. And for hopefully, Viveport Infinity can be like the moon landing, a small step for mankind, but a giant leap for our industry. So thank you for that. Thank you very much. So, without further ado, I would like to welcome my colleague Vinay up on stage.
All right, guys. How's everyone doing this morning? So as everyone was coming in, it was actually really good to see a lot of familiar faces, especially from many years ago as we were sending out our first developer kits. And I really it was good to kind of see that kind of crew coming back and really talking about a lot of, actually there was a lot of you that still actually have your original VIVE developer kit, which is actually intentional. When we started out this journey for just immersive technologies as a whole, we knew that this platform that we were building, now we weren't calling it a platform, of course we just talked about hardware, because hardware still is the foundation for this technology platform. But we wanted it to last, and we knew it was going to last. And those lasting meant that we were going to have iterative hardware, but it didn't mean you're going to throw out what we have already invested in and built. And that's always been very intentional. And so that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you guys about today. Our mission has always been to become your fastest path to create and distribute the most immersive experiences. We know that your time is being asked for by so many other platforms and opportunities, and just want to let you know we really value that. but we also want to support you in a very deep way. We've been heads down for such a long time by just building. And in this process, we kind of sometimes forget to even talk about why we're building what we're building and how everything kind of really fits into place. And today, I'm really here to talk about something more than just actually hardware. I'm really here to talk about our platform strategy. VivePort is definitely one of the platforms that you guys are very well aware of, the ability to publish and monetize your content. But what about pulling in a fragmented hardware ecosystem? What about tools that make your experiences much more immersive? What about tools and SDKs that also make it easier to develop not just on our hardware, but other hardware as well? And before I kind of get into that, let's actually talk about our hardware. When we originally built the Vive, we wanted to make sure that with each iteration that we were not going to disrupt the content pipeline. Meaning, when you were going to build for the next hardware, your previous content was going to work. Your install base was not going to go away because of a new iteration in hardware. And every time we made an improvement, it was truly meaningful for the industry. And for that, I actually thank all of you, because it was really easy to do something very different with the Vive Pro. But you guys that are using this product on a day in and day out basis said, we really need to make sure that the current content we have works for the next headset, but also we need to be able to read text. And when we made the Vive Pro, we looked at so many different options. And so we wanted to make sure when we increased resolution, we did two things. It was a meaningful impact in resolution increase, so you can read text, but at the same time, you did not have to upgrade your GPUs and actually completely destroy the ecosystem. And through that process, we've learned about meaningful integrations. And that's why with Vive Pro I, we talked about this at CES, and another piece of hardware and headset we're super excited to bring to the market. And with Vive Pro I, you have eye tracking, allows you to do foveated rendering, as well as a numerous host of other eye tracking enabled experiences. Once you've done an eye tracking headset experience, it is so intuitive. And you really realize that this is the way to get a lot more users into the headset and drive much more meaningful experiences. So we wanted to continue to build and expand our leadership in PC-based VR. But while we were doing that, we realized that there's another category that was growing at a very rapid pace. And that is the all-in-one category. All-in-one category, as you are well aware of, are mobile chipset-based headsets that ditch the PC. Now, while PC-based experiences are still the Ferrari of VR, and they also allow a lot more integrations, but we also understand in order to kind of meet the market need, there's that segment. So as the all-in-one market was expanding pretty vigorously, actually, and continues to do so, there's one thing that the market really wanted and developers wanted. They wanted a higher quality headset. And that's why we built the Vive Focus. Once we launched the Focus, the immediate thing you guys asked for next is, with a 6-DoF headset, you wanted a 6-DoF controller. And we worked really hard and really fast to create a dev kit that not only gave you the 6-DoF controller, but also made sure you can just add it on to the investment you already made on a Focus. And now we have the Vive Focus Plus, which is that integrated consumer-ready headset for 6 degrees of freedom headset and 6 degrees of freedom controller. And much more than the headset, there's also a platform that runs the Focus, the Wave. And we'll definitely talk about Wave in more detail later. So of course, that brings us to Cosmos. So what is Cosmos? While I'm not here to really talk much about Cosmos, because I'm really here to talk about our software platforms, Cosmos is our next consumer headset that really addresses kind of one of the major pain points of general consumer adoption, which is ease of use and extensibility. Consumers want a headset that is just intuitive. You don't have to figure out complex hardware connections, but they also want to make sure when you're investing in a VR hardware platform, what is it going to mean to them a year or 2 years from now? What if their behaviors and usability changes? And Cosmos is built to really address those. So clearly, hardware is super important. However, it is not the most important thing. We do believe the biggest growth is in platforms. So what does platforms mean to HTC? Platforms really is the intersection and integrations of content creation tools, as well as partnerships that help to not just grow the ecosystem, but fit into the ecosystem. Because platforms really allows us to continue to build without trying to figure out how is this going to work with other things? How can we make sure that our technology investments or content is extensible? How does it work really well today? And how does it meet the technology needs of the future? In doing so, we've actually created a lot of great in integrations in our platform. And the way we kind of look at platforms in general when it comes to the hardware platform business is looking at it really from 3 pillars. And those three pillars are the VIVE Sense SDK stack, the VIVE Wave SDK stack, as well as VIVE Port, which we'll get into a lot more depth here today. In fact, the rest of the day is really about the specifics. We've talked a little bit about kind of some of the things we're doing in the industry. Today, we've actually brought our engineers that are actually the brains behind every single one of those SDKs, why they built it, how they built it. And we actually brought them here today for you to not only talk to them and see why they've built it, but we also brought our partners that are actually using this platform to share their best practices, to show how our solutions have actually impacted their business, and we'll definitely do a Q&A. So definitely stick around for that, we hope that as we go forward in our journey together in immersive technologies, that we can be a lot more conversational and a lot more action-oriented, staying away from some of the futuristic things that will eventually happen, but really talk about how we're going to work on these technologies together. And so the VIVE Sense, we really want to maximize your VIVE hardware. And the way we're going to do that is the categories. So some of you may be familiar with this term Sense, especially if you were a mobile developer on Android. We started really defining the user interface for Android with the VIVE Sense. VIVE Sense was the most intuitive way to use Android, but it also was lightweight. If you've ever been an HTC phone user, you also understand that our phones were always a little bit faster than the other kind of Android layers because we wanted to make sure usability was also paramount and that interface was also very intuitive. And we took that similar approach to VIVE. And our Sense platforms, our Sense SDK stack, really addresses kind of those main categories of what a better and more immersive experience can be. And we're going to talk about all of those today in depth, the data behind it, the science behind it, as well as how it's actually impacting the development community. And I think the other thing to also think about today as we kind of go forward, a lot of this stuff has been built by your input. In fact, I would love more input. And that's why I'm here today. I'm here today to not only talk about what we're building, but how can we do a better job of building it together. We don't want to create a closed ecosystem. We want a lot more input. We want to make sure we know how we can drive value for your business and for your experiences. I feel like the VivePort team has done a great job of really putting their money where their mouth is and really giving that revenue back to the development community, making publishing a lot easier. Now we want to make hardware integrations a lot easier as well. And with the VIVE Wave, if you look at all of the all-in-one headsets that are out there, there are over 400 headsets in the all-in-one category. Our goal with the Wave is actually to unify that hardware. In fact, it's not just an SDK stack, but really a platform that allows you to build on one Wave SDK stack and deploy on all VIVE Wave-enabled headsets. And this will really not only simplify the type of experiences and how you can actually deploy, but also give you some extensibility. You're building content today, but we want to make sure 2 years down the road, you have a place to actually deploy that content without having to reinvent the wheel, recreate so much content. And this platform is actually relatively new. But this year, in less than 2 years of introducing the Focus and the VIVE Wave platform, we'll have 10 VIVE Wave-enabled headsets. These headsets range from a 3DOF headset with a 3DOF controller to the Focus Plus with a 6DOF headset and 6DOF controller, and also in varying price ranges as well. So it's also really important to understand that going forward, especially in non-gaming scenarios, our lives will not just have one VR product. We're going to have a portfolio of headsets that our consumers want, that our partners want. And we want to make sure that they have an option and that your content can live across those options. But none of this really would be possible without really the key part of platforms, and not just software integrations, but partnerships. And that's why I'm very proud to really be in close collaboration with Qualcomm. Qualcomm has really defined the technology stack needed for mobile XR. And here to talk more about that is Hugo Swart, head of XR for Qualcomm. Please help me welcome Hugo.
All right, good morning. So thanks, HTC Vive guys, for the great partnership. I think we are together on the same boat. We are big believers in both VR and AR. For those of you who have followed Qualcomm over the years, you may remember about more than 10, actually we started with the Vuforia, right, an SDK for augmented reality. So since then, we have invested quite a bit in algorithms, in chips. So it's interesting, if you look into the cycle to develop a new silicon platform, we talk about 3 years in advance. So basically at Qualcomm, we have to be futurist. We have to think about 3 years from now, what will the market demand? So when we had the Snapdragon 820 as the first chip that we considered ready for VR, and that was about 3 years ago, actually 3 years ago, that means that 3 years before that, we had to be planning in features on that chip. So we continue to believe in this market, we continue to invest, and of course, we want it to grow, and that's when the partnership with HTC VIVE came about a little over a year ago on this strengthening collaboration on the platform side that Vinay mentioned, and I'm going to talk a little bit more in the next 3 slides. So first, I think the journey to the Holy Grail, right, is happening. We're making progress. We know that, the all-in-one glass that I wear the whole day that was going to do VR and AR, it's not yet in 2019. It's probably going to take 5 to 10 years until we get there, but we're making steady progress. Starting from smartphones, both on the top with AR, in the bottom with VR, to in VR, and I'm referring to the mobile XR evolution, right? The first 3 DOF standalone devices, 6 DOF head with 3 DOF controllers, 6 DOF controllers, 6 DOF head, and now making them smaller and smaller and different variants of form factors until we get to this Holy Grail and the 2 path converge on AR and AR. So, but we see that the opportunity is now, right? Yes, of course, for this market to be as big as a smartphone and ultimately even replace a smartphone is going to take years. But already in 2018, as Ricard showed, and 2019, we see even more promising form factors. We see in particular this year, a year that we're going to see expansion on the multiple categories of devices for VR. Of course, standalone devices becoming more prevalent, all-in-ones with the 6 DOF head, 6 DOF controllers, as Vinay was mentioning. But now there are 2 categories of devices that I wanted you as developers also to be aware. On the left side, we see a rebirth of a smartphone VR coming and taking shape again. At Mobile World Congress a month ago, we announced that we are enabling VR through a viewer, right, a plug-in viewer connected to 5G smartphones. As you all know, operators around the globe are deploying 5G. They want use cases for 5G. What's a great use case for 5G? You need a lot of pixel, you need a lot of bandwidth. Well, VR is here to help them. So there's going to be big motivations from the operator community to incentivize VR. And how do we have 5G and VR together? This is going to be a first instantiation, where you have a 5G smartphone with Snapdragon 855, connect a viewer, which, by the way, also supporting the Wave SDK, and there you go. You have a great VR experience parallel to the standalone type experience. Now, on the right side, this is a new type of implementation that we are actually announcing and showing here at GDC. I highly recommend you to come to our demo area in the W Hotel, 3rd floor. Just come in. We have demos. The idea is that you have a standalone VR HMD, inside-out tracking, 6 DOF controllers. Now, the amount of power that you can dissipate on a standalone device is limited, right? It's not like a gaming PC where you can put 300 watts, 400 watts for the best visuals. Now, what if we could combine the 2 worlds, right? When I'm away from the PC, great all-in-one experience. When I'm in proximity with the PC, I still have the same ease of use with inside-out tracking and then wirelessly connect to the PC. That's what we're calling boundless VR for PC. Again, we have it at the W. Highly recommend you to see. And then you would have devices that can operate in two modes. A mode where you're connected to the PC. I have the PC ecosystem, PC games, PC quality of experience. I'm away from the PC. I have my mobile experience. And then, that's comes to why we are closely working with VIVE. Because we as Qualcomm, we are a horizontal provider. We provide our silicon to multiple OEMs. The ones that Vinay mentioned, Ricard mentioned in China, they're basically all based on Snapdragon. Our Snapdragon 820, Snapdragon 835, Snapdragon 845. And when we started engaging, in particular in China, with this multiple OEMs, we figured that, hey, each OEM cannot have their own platform. That is not scalable. We need a uniform platform. And this came, starting in China. And we said, hey, why don't we have a common platform for China? And that's when, Ricard, Raymond, and a few others from HTC and Qualcomm decided to work together. This was about over a year ago. And we announced a common VR platform that leverages all the Qualcomm assets in terms of our silicon, the algorithms that we provide together with our silicon, and our reference designs. That combined with what the VIVE provide in the Wave SDK, the VIVE port, and the Sense, now we put these two together and enable all these OEMs to go to market, quickly go to market, following our reference design, Qualcomm reference design on the hardware side, plus the platform from VIVE, and then enabling either all-in-ones or smartphone plug-in, slot-in with the same platform, the same games, the same ecosystem by leveraging the Wave platform. So very happy to be working together with VIVE. Looking forward to have you on board as well on this journey. Right? I think last year, if you were at the VRLA, I had a talk that VR is not a sprint, is a marathon. We truly believe, right, this is a journey, it's going to change our lives. We have to keep investing. We have to persist. And I think that we're seeing the growth. We're seeing the growth in 2018, and now very happy with 2019 with the developments on all-in-ones, mobile smartphone connected to a viewer, and with the Boundless XR, where it enables you this dual mode between the mobile and standalone. So again, very happy to be working with VIVE, and hopefully you can come to the W and we can speak a little bit more. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you, Hugo. All right, great. Thank you, Hugo, for that. I think, when you look at these deeper partnerships, all of a sudden you realize the long-term investments that when especially partners can get together really kind of helps your investments go a really long way. When we look at even our partners that are using the Wave platform or even selling in focus, they really want to look at much more than just that current HMD's investment. They're looking at who are you working with together to make sure that our investments actually have a lot of relevance. They're also extensible down the road. And that's why I think partnering with Qualcomm, especially when it comes to the all-in-one and overall kind of Wave SDK stack, really kind of goes to show that long-term commitment. And a lot of this may be new to you guys. And we want to make sure that we're giving you a lot more information. We're also answering your questions as well, not just here at GDC, but also on developer.vive.com. So that's, for many of you, it's already been your resource, and we want to continue to expand that resource to continue to engage with the community. So speaking of VivePort, so the VivePort SDK stack has been an amazing way for you to streamline the publishing your content, monetizing your content, but also the experiences for VivePort. We've really kind of seen in VivePort the first-hand experience, not just kind of a subscription model, which changes how we consume content, but also those user experiences once you're in VivePort. And we're going to talk about VivePort SDKs here in a little bit, but so what's next? So we've talked about content monetization and publishing. We've talked about unifying a hardware platform, but I think there's something else that's a little bit missing. What we call the VIVE reality system is really the intersection of hardware, software, and user experience. When you think of VR today, is it really the VR you really imagine it to be? Yeah, the hardware is great, and some of the tools for publishing have been really good, but is that experience truly native for VR? And that's, to us, what the VIVE reality system really means, is regardless of the partnerships we have, regardless of the tools that we're using and the hardware integrations, it's one seamless, intuitive, and natural experience in a headset. And part of that really means is how we actually design the overall VR experiences. Initially, we went from a 2D app port to 3D. It was the most natural way to do things. But we have a team, it's almost a company within a company with our creative studios. The creative studios are basically a developer community within HTC that looks like many years down the road is how are we going to evolve how we're experiencing VR. And that includes everything from a system UI integration all the way down to how we're going to share and interact with others. And as part of that, we also have a feature called Lens. Lens is really going to be a lightweight and a powerful way to casually browse and explore other content. Right now, a lot of it's kind of menuing. You actually have to know which button to click, and when you look at it, you also have to know what to do. But there is a better way to do that, and that's what we're really building with Lens. Is a lightweight, fast way for consumers to browse and actually engage a lot deeper. And that's great, especially for the developer community, because once you're in a headset and you're having a great experience that's built upon solid hardware, how can we get users to explore more? And especially when you think about the Infinity subscription service, you have all this content at your fingertips. How can we get it to you sooner and much easier in a much more intuitive way, in a way that makes you want to engage a lot more? And then taking that a step further too, we're also building tools like a soft keyboard and voice input. So that allows you to stay in a headset. It allows you to also interact in ways that are a lot more intuitive, especially when you're VR, especially if you're new to VR. And so a lot more to come about the VIVE reality system in the future, but I wanted to introduce that to you, especially because I would love to hear what you think on our forums. And so some future concepts, so we'll talk about some of these things today, but cloud VR, everyone's talked about cloud VR, but we were really the first ones to really show actually how that works. At Mobile World Congress, being a technology company, we kind of get how many different things work. And one of the things that we're pioneering is actually 5G and an actual usable 5G hotspot. And as soon as we kind of announced that we're going to have this type of product, the community said, well, can we stream VR content? In fact, there was a lot of discussion how that's not possible. And at Mobile World Congress, we actually showed that it is actually possible, and we're doing it. We actually stream content to the VIVE Focus. And it's an amazing experience, and while that's a little further down the road for the development community to play with, which will actually happen, there's something a little bit more near term. So we're seeing a lot of growth in kind of facial expression tracking and kind of software tools. And the partners that we've been working with, the development community that we've been working with, they've actually wanted a lot more accurate tracking systems. And so while we're still very bullish on software platforms being able to do that, we still need hardware to do that. So we actually have a lip tracking module that you can actually add on to the VIVE Pro. And actually, I do have that here today, but I'm saving that for the facial expression SDK session, which will actually show that module later on in the day. So please do stick around for that. But we will also open that up first to the developer community. We don't necessarily plan on consumerizing this product. Like consumers won't see this product, but there's a lot of fun things that we're building internally that we will like to now start to share that a little more aggressively, a little more structured in a more structured way. So in our forums, in our developer community pages, we're going to actually in a couple weeks do a call. If you are a lip tracking company doing or tracking facial expressions, and you're looking for a much more accurate way to capture, whether you're using AI to do more learning models, so then you can kind of build better avatars, or you're doing mocap, we definitely call you to come to our developer page in a couple weeks. We'll continue to make some announcements, and we'd love to actually have you to sign up to get a developer kit. And lastly, eye tracking. I briefly spoke about eye tracking, and we'll talk a lot about eye tracking today. Just to even mention foveated rendering or gaze tracking does not do it justice. Really, in short, eye tracking is really one of the biggest innovations, especially in HMDs. And we are doing it in a way that, in partnership, not just with our eye tracking partner, but also with NVIDIA to make variable rate shading much more easier to do using the VIVE Pro Eye. So I'm really excited about that session later on today and hope you can check that out. So And that's pretty much kind of why I'm here. I just really talk about the things we're working with to really re-engage and start a deeper dialogue. And I hope to really hear from you, get your input, as well as share a lot of the really cool things we're working on at developervive.com. And while that was it for me, and in terms of kind of spirit of kind of building something together, I'd love to introduce Bjorn book on here for VP of Product for Viveport.
Thanks. So stick around here so we do the Q&A.
Oh, you want to do it? Okay.
All right. So I'm going to take very little of your time today. We have just a few minutes. But as the VP of Product, it's my responsibility to expand the software platform, work with the developers, and make sure that Viveport fulfills the promise to developers. And specifically, let's see if we can make this work. Oh, yeah, look at that. We are obviously relying on some really amazing partners in the industry to make these VR experiences come alive. Unity and Unreal, of course, are the big game engines, been around for a very long time. And AWS has been a great partner with their tool called Sumerian. And if you guys haven't checked that out, you definitely should. It's a lightweight way to enter into VR development, mostly for enterprises and business uses. But one of the things that we really strive for is to make your life easier as a developer, especially while the VR market is a growing market and is not yet a mass market. So today we would like to announce a partnership that we have with Photon. Christoph Wegman, who is the CTO and co-founder of Photon, is here today and will actually join our session at 11:20. And we're going to talk about how a tool like Photon helps cross the boundaries between different platforms. It shouldn't really matter if you publish for an Oculus store or a Viveport store or any other store in the world. You should be able to use a simple integration to reach those users no matter what platform that they are on. So the Photon partnership, we're going to be sponsoring some of our developers to get the premium versions of Photon. And in the Viveport developer portal, you'll be able to connect from your Viveport account directly to a Photon account and get various benefits, both technical as well as support, if you work with us as a developer. The next thing I wanted to point out was that at 11:20 today, we're going to have a session. We call it the Developer Success in the Era of New Competing Digital Platforms. I'll be leading this session for about 20 minutes and share some of the numbers that we have seen from the introduction of our initial subscription system 18 months ago. And as Rickard had announced, we are about to launch what we call Viveport Infinity. And Infinity is going to be an infinite subscription, and it's not going to be bound by these slots that we have had in the original subscription system. And we'll talk about why we made that decision, how the revenues have changed, and it will be about 20 minutes of that session. And then we'll have a 30-minute moment where we talk to both Christoph, Graham, who's the founder of VR Chat, as well as David Sapienza, who's the executive producer for Two Bears. And we'll talk about how they have adopted to developing games in VR and how it's different than PC, but also presents some unique opportunities, even if you're a small team or if you just have a creative idea and you want to explore a medium that has not yet been completely taken over by the modern warfares and the giant games of the world. So then the afternoon, from about 1 till 6 o'clock, we're going to have an entire series of sessions that's going to be focused on the hardware and the engineering team. We have a lot of our engineers here from Taipei who are here to both lead some of the sessions, participate, and also answer questions in those sessions. Starting around 1:20 with the Viveport SDK sessions, and then leading into hardware sessions in the afternoon and software SDKs that relate to hand tracking, to the different features that Vinay was mentioning. And I highly encourage you guys, if you have an interest both in the current wave of development as well as the future, to come to those sessions and also ask your questions. And that's really it for the initial session here this morning. We do want to say we have, I think, about 5 minutes to take a couple of questions. We have Rickard available with a microphone to answer some of those, Vinay, as well as Hugo, and Hugo's waving. So if you have a specific question, there's a microphone in the center aisle. If you line up by that, we will try to take as many as we possibly can. Any brave person, feel free to join that microphone. And before you ask a question, just say your name and who you work for.
Audio? Great. I'm Ralph Muehlberger from 89 Friends. We're about to bring out an augmented reality app, so we're very interested in where you're going long term. I'm actually interested in, Ricard, in your new pricing model. I'm wondering whether the percentage revenue share is going to be based on the amount of time people play or just whether they start it up.
That's a great question, and I suggest you join us at 11:20. We will. But the short answer to it is it will be based on how much content you play in a month or how many unique titles you play. It's not time-based. It's actually encouraging you to make people come back month after month. And we'll share more details about that at 11:20.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Hi, my name is Kevin Harper. I'm from Us2, New York.
Okay.
I guess my question was a little similar, but it was if 100 people, if one person plays 100 games, does that mean that that revenue is divided 100 times? Or is there like a minimum time investment in each product?
Again, join us at 11:20. I look forward to seeing you there. We'll have this discussion. The short version is if someone really did play 100 games in the initial month that they played, you would actually get that person's revenue divided 100 times. However, what we'll share at 11 is we'll talk about how people actually play the games. And it turns out that most people play a couple of titles, and the ones that sustain them for the long term, so for 6 months, 10 months, 12 months, tend to be, let's say, 2 to 3 different titles. They'll explore a bunch in the beginning, and then they'll sort of stick to a few titles as they go. So the revenues actually will be larger for the developer, especially if you make a recurring experience.
Thanks.
Yes, sound.
Testing.
There you go.
Yeah, so contrary to what you may actually think, if we looked at the data for the past year or even before that, it's very, very clear that people spend primarily their weekends, if you're a normal person, doing VR. And actually, in terms of average for years usage, people are kind of honing in on 3-4 games on a monthly basis. There's also caps, so you need to have to avoid accidental usage. So there's a cap on how much you have to be actually, considering playing a game. But actually, it's surprising. People will, probably only hone in on 3-4 games. I don't know how many different games you play in a month. But you'll probably find out something similar. And also, 100 games is now possible. However, just downloading that will probably take a month. Yes.
Okay.
Hey, y'all. My name's Amber Golst. I work for Qualcomm. I actually have 2 questions, if I'm allowed. The first question is when you reference the VR chat, and you said, the growth of that, there was, an exponential number of users. My question was if you had any studies or that you're willing to share on, are more of those connections happening for people that already know, like they're getting onto the platform because, hey, I know my buddy in X state or X country is on at this time? Or is it more towards I can meet new people? Like, so as far as the percentages of those types of experiences that are occurring?
I think we have Graham from VR Chat here in the next session. So we'll let him answer. Are you here, Graham?
We only have 2 minutes. We'll save this.
But so we're going to make sure you get that answer from the source.
Awesome. Okay. Second question is anything towards the future for VIVE in that I think the presentations all today were great about people exploring the platform once they're on it. But what about the types of experiences to introduce those that are like feel weirded out, right? So all of us that are out there like, let me show my friend or show this or show that. What are the types of things that VIVE is doing to try and help new users in experiencing VR for the first time?
So let me actually jump in and say Rickard mentioned it in his presentation. We have the concept we call VR curious. And it turns out a ton of people are curious about VR. And in fact, VR chat is one of the main places where people first go. And again, Graham will share some of this data in our session, but basically majority of the users of VR chat are not using VR. They're observing people in VR. So it's a good introduction. And that's, of course, on the entertainment side. I think on the training and enterprise side, there's a few other answers. But of course, there's people willing to do an upfront investment to bring companies in to do training in VR, for instance. And it doesn't quite have that amount of friction to just try it out for the companies.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
But return to the session at 11:20. And I promise you, we'll make Graham answer in great detail.
Awesome.
Okay.
Hello, my name's John Wheeler. I work for Unity. I just wondered if you guys had any insights into the future of tracking. It seems like there's a move away from outside in and lasers and lighthouses and more sixed off, but do you guys see SLAM and other technologies working their way into these headsets?
Maybe Hugo or Vinay, do you guys?
Sure, yeah. So I think in general, we're looking at all those technologies. The main goal, though, is to make sure that we've always wanted to make sure you had a sense of presence and immersion. So whatever tracking technology that we're using, whether it's on the all-in-one side or on the kind of the PC-based side, that latency is a big issue, right? So we want so as those technologies continue to converge and become a lot more accurate, we're looking at kind of all those different. So, but definitely the goal is to make VR much easier for all consumers. So of course, there's a natural inclination to go inside out, right, versus outside in for that.
Just a 20-second on my side. Of course, as Qualcomm, we believe in inside-out tracking, developing the algorithms, but not only in software. On our latest chip, we already put some of these algorithms in hardware so that we lower the power, which is essential on a head-worn device.
Yep. So if we have one more question, let's go for that.
Alex from Asia Interactive, Alex Mack from Asia Interactive. My only question was, you mentioned sort of the increasing role of secondary attraction-based arcade VR earlier, and that one of your initiatives is to help support that a little bit more cleanly and a little bit better for developers. My question was really around whether there are any plans to support developers driving players from the arcade attraction model to home VR, so incentivizing players for logging in and experiencing in the arcade setting.
Nothing is announced, but the answer is yes, and I think it's a great idea. Both when it comes to discovery, helping people find our arcades, making sure that people have a great experience, and maybe also that get remember where you are in the kind of in the VR experience. So similar to, I don't know, like an open table for finding restaurants. So we're definitely looking at that, and we also think that arcades are important because it drives awareness, and many people's first sort of VR experience might be in an arcade. So it's great not just for VIVE, but for everyone in the VR ecosystem. I think the one thing I didn't mention is that we do believe that you need to have something which kind of is unique for the arcade. And I do think there are opportunities to use eye tracking or haptic feedback or all kinds of awesome stuff so the arcades have something unique that you can't have in home use. But I do think that if you take like Arizona Sunshine, of course it's a great home experience, but you can have an awesome for people haptic feedback kick-ass arcade experience. So I think if you as a developer think about what is the arcade version, what is the home version, maybe it's almost like maybe you launch first in arcade to drive awareness and get some love, and then in a later window you come to pay and download, and then you're in subscription. So you kind of think about similar to what others have done in the movie industry.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, everyone, and stay for the next session as well.